Welcome to Module 2, Resource Requirements of the Horse Council of British Columbia Emergency Preparedness Training Series. This module is going to cover the types of resources you will need to access for evacuation and temporary housing, and considerations when sourcing them. Though this list is quite comprehensive, there may be other supplies required based on location and the type of animals housed at the temporary facilities. Temporary housing facilities for evacuated animals should be identified before an emergency event occurs. Examples of possible sites include boarding stables, fairgrounds, rodeo grounds, arenas, auction markets, or a feedlot. Depending on the amount of animals that may require temporary housing or the size of the evacuation area, you may need multiple locations to house all the animals. The facility should have the ability to segregate animals when required. This would include animals that are incompatible by nature or sick and injured animals. Other considerations when choosing a facility include how easy the site is to get in and out of, especially with large livestock trailers. Is there cell phone service in the area? How safe is the site, both the safety of the facilities and location, as the site should not be in the path of a fire or on a floodplain. Accessibility to water, and the number of animals it can house in stalls or pens. Portable panels or gates are temporary fencing equipment that can be set up to create a holding corral or pen for individual or groups of animals. These panels are very common in rural agricultural areas. Livestock panels come in varying lengths and styles. The panels should be at least 5 feet high for effective containment of horses, and they come in a variety of lengths, most commonly ranging from 5 to 16 feet. They must be safe for the animals, including that they hook together securely and have no gaps where horses can get stuck or injured. Possible sources of livestock panels include the local grazing association or community pasture, rodeo grounds, fairgrounds, farm supply stores, or larger ranches. Other fencing options may include portable electric fencing or snow fencing. Posts may be required for some of the fencing, and consideration needs to be given to the time of year and the ability to penetrate the ground to plant the posts. Water is a necessary provision when housing animals, even temporarily. In regards to water, first and foremost, the water needs to be potable, meaning that it is safe to drink and accessible. The water supply for a facility should be inspected when you originally identify it as an evacuation site. You will need to determine if there will be enough water or water pressure for the number of animals. As an example, individual horses require 12 to 20 gallons of water per day. You will also need to determine how the water can be accessed. Is power required to run the pump from the well, and do you need hoses to deliver the water? Keep in mind, a power outage may impact your ability to access well water. If there is not enough water or the power goes out, you may need to secure a means to transport water into the site. And finally, You must have enough vessels, such as buckets and water troughs, to supply the amount of water required to all the animals. If animals are going to be housed for over 24 hours, they will require a source of feed. Since the diets of animals can vary greatly, the provision of good, quality grass hay is the safest and easiest feedstuff to provide. Horses should not be fed grain or hay that is high in alfalfa due to risk of digestive upset and possible colic if the feed is not one they are used to. You should identify ahead of time hay distributors within your region that stock hay year-round. Small square bales are most desirable as they are small enough to move by hand. Handling equipment requirements for horses is quite minimal. Transporters and evacuation sites should have access to extra halters, lead shanks, and blankets. Bedding may be required in trailers, for housing facilities, or for triage pens. Straw or shavings are the most common and accessible types of bedding. Most livestock producers have a supply of straw year-round. Small square bales are the most desirable as they do not require tractors to handle them. Shavings should be purchased in bags, as they are easier to handle, can be easily moved between sites, and can be stored for future use. And it is important to be aware that both shavings and straw are highly combustible and must be stored in a safe area and monitored, as they can self-ignite. Unfortunately, animals may perish during an emergency event and possibly at an evacuation site. Sites must be prepared to deal with dead stock, even on a temporary basis. Volunteers should make themselves aware of the requirements for storage or disposal of dead stock per the Code of Practice for Agricultural Environmental Management. A temporary holding site should be identified at the evacuation site and disposal methods established ahead of time. You should work with your local municipality on dead stock disposal methods. Other supplies to consider include signage for stalls or pens, pitchforks, rakes, shovels, and wheelbarrows, a toolbox with all the necessary tools, such as hammers, nails, wrenches, pliers, a sledgehammer, and fencing pliers, a post pounder to install posts if needed, zip ties, tarps, first aid supplies for humans, tables and chairs, pens, pencils, permanent markers, and bottled water for your volunteers. Each regional team should create a resource list for their area in preparation for an emergency event. This list should be customized to each location and their resources. Each item should include the name of the source, the location or address, the phone number of the contact, and for facilities, you should also list what the maximum number of animals it can house in pens or stalls. All sources must be contacted when creating your list to ensure they are willing and able to supply what you need. This list should be reviewed and updated at least once a year. There is an example on the right-hand side of the screen of what your equine emergency preparedness resource list should contain. Finally, we will do a quick review of the key points from this module. Sources for supplies should be identified well ahead of an emergency event. Portable panels should be a minimum of 5 feet high and hooked together securely. Water must be potable and available in amounts required for the number of animals housed at the facility. Only grass hay should be fed to horses. Each site should have a supply of extra halters and lead shanks at a minimum. Bedding is a combustible and should be stored properly. And dead stock disposal options should be included in your planning. We have now reached the end of Module 2. You can now proceed to Module 3, Containment and Housing.